Today we are going to talk about something uncomfortable. Not how to become rich, that conversation is everywhere. Podcasts, YouTube, TikTok, how I made my first million. No, today we are going to talk about something much harder. How to stop being poor. Because wealth is optional, but escaping poverty is survival. Most people believe poverty is simply a low bank balance. They are wrong. Poverty is not a number. Poverty is a force. It behaves like gravity. Imagine standing at the bottom of a deep well. The walls are smooth. Every time you climb halfway up, your hands slip. You fall back down, sometimes lower than before. That is not bad luck. That is physics. When a rocket launches into space, it must reach what scientists call escape velocity. If it burns 99% of the required fuel, but falls even slightly short of the necessary speed, it does not get 99% closer to orbit. It crashes. That is how poverty works. You work overtime. You save a little. You finally reach $2,000 in savings. Then the transmission in your car fails, or rent increases, or you get sick. You didn't reach escape velocity, so gravity pulls you back down, hard. And here's the cruel part. Each fall drains your energy. Each failure reduces your confidence. Each setback burns fuel you don't easily replace. That is why working a little harder doesn't solve poverty. Linear effort cannot defeat exponential gravity. You don't need 10% more effort. You need a structural shift. And here's something even more important. The system is not rigged because of conspiracy. It's rigged because of mathematics. Being poor is expensive. If you cannot buy in bulk, you pay higher unit prices. If you cannot afford durable boots, you buy cheap ones every year. If you cannot afford preventative health care, you pay for emergency surgery later. This is known as the Boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. The poor spend more over time for worse outcomes. Poverty charges interest. It charges overdraft fees, late fees, high interest rates, penalty rates, service fees. You are not just running a race. You are running uphill with a backpack full of bricks while someone else runs downhill with wind at their back. And the most dangerous part? Poverty rewires your brain. When financial stress dominates your thoughts, your body enters survival mode. Cortisol rises. Your cognitive bandwidth shrinks. Long-term planning becomes almost impossible. You stop thinking 5 years ahead. You start thinking 5 days ahead, or 5 hours. Low income creates stress. Stress creates poor decisions. Poor decisions prevent asset creation. No assets mean continued low income. That is the poverty loop, a closed system. But here is the good news. Physics works both ways. If gravity exists, so does thrust. If there is a trap, there is also escape velocity. In this series, we are going to dismantle the 5 chains that hold people down. The scarcity tax that drains your mind. The dopamine trap that drains your wallet. The linear income trap that caps your time. The social gravity that pulls you back. And finally, the compound void that keeps wealth from forming. We are not here to fantasize about yachts. We are here to survive launch. Because once you reach orbit, something incredible happens. The friction disappears. Silence replaces chaos. And for the first time in your life, you are no longer fighting gravity. You are floating above it. But first, we must ignite the engines. Before you can escape poverty, you must understand the first chain, scarcity. Most people think if you hand someone money, the problem disappears. But research shows something uncomfortable. Scarcity is not only about cash, it is about bandwidth. When your brain is constantly calculating how to survive the next week, it has no space left to design the next 5 years. Studies from behavioral economists have shown that financial stress can reduce effective cognitive performance significantly. Not because someone is less intelligent, but because their mental processor is overloaded. Imagine trying to run advanced software on a computer with 20 tabs open and a virus running in the background. That is the poverty brain. You are not stupid. You are exhausted. You are not irresponsible. You are overloaded. This is the scarcity tax. It shows up everywhere. You take a payday loan because you need cash immediately. The interest rate is brutal, but survival demands speed. You buy cheap groceries because they are affordable today, even if they cost more long-term in health. You delay car maintenance because you don't have the funds. Then the repair becomes catastrophic. Each short-term decision is rational in isolation, but collectively they form a trap. Let me explain it with something simple. If a wealthy person buys a $100 jacket that lasts 10 years, they spend $10 per year. If a poor person buys a $20 jacket that falls apart every winter, they spend $200 over 10 years. The person with less money pays more. This is not moral failure. It is structural mathematics. Scarcity increases prices. Late rent fees, overdraft penalties, higher insurance rates, higher credit card interest. When you lack capital, the system charges you extra. That is the tax. So how do we break this first loop? Not by investing, not by trading, not by chasing side hustles. The first objective is simple. Build a buffer, even $500, even $1,000. This is not investment money. This is cognitive restoration money. When your car breaks down and you can pay cash, your brain does not enter panic mode. When rent increases slightly and you have reserves, you respond strategically, not emotionally. That small buffer buys something invisible, mental clarity. It reduces cortisol. It restores long-term thinking. It turns emergencies into inconveniences. Most people try to build wealth before they build stability. That is like constructing a skyscraper on wet sand. You must solidify the ground first. For a few months, you may need to live differently. Minimal, disciplined, intentional. Not forever, just long enough to stop the bleeding. Because once the scarcity tax is neutralized, your mind begins to function at full capacity again. And when your brain is clear, you become dangerous. But scarcity is not the only trap. Once you stabilize financially, something more emotional appears, something biological. The second chain is harder to see and much harder to resist. It is called the dopamine trap. Now we enter the most emotional chain, the one that doesn't look like poverty, but quietly guarantees it. The dopamine trap. You've heard the criticism before. If you're struggling financially, why do you have the latest phone? Why buy expensive sneakers? Why eat out when you could cook? From the outside, it looks irrational. From the inside, it makes perfect biological sense. When you live under constant financial pressure, your stress hormone, cortisol, stays elevated. You feel behind. You feel small. You feel stuck. Your brain craves relief. It craves a win. And when you buy something new, a gadget, a jacket, a night out, your brain releases dopamine. For a short moment, you feel powerful, successful, in control. It's not consumption, it's anesthesia. You are numbing pain. The problem? The relief is temporary. The debt is permanent. The dopamine fades in minutes. The interest compounds for years. Here is the key distinction between financial classes. Low-income thinking asks, "What can I buy with this?" Wealth-building thinking asks, "What can this buy for me?" If you spend $500 on a luxury item, it loses value immediately. If you use $500 to acquire a skill, a tool, or a small asset, it may generate value repeatedly. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out. The dopamine trap keeps people surrounded by liabilities. Nice car, designer clothes, subscription services, upgrades. From the outside, they look successful. From the inside, they are bleeding. And here's the dangerous truth. Consumer culture is engineered to trigger this trap. Bright lights, limited time offers, status signaling, social media comparison. It is a psychological battlefield. So how do you break it? You enter what I call reset mode. For a defined period, 3 to 6 months, you radically simplify your life. You cancel unnecessary subscriptions. You cook at home. You pause non-essential purchases. You avoid lifestyle upgrades. Not because you can't afford joy, but because you are retraining your reward system. At first, it feels boring, uncomfortable, socially awkward. But something fascinating happens. When you stop getting dopamine from spending, you start getting dopamine from progress, from watching your savings increase, from reducing debt, from seeing stability grow. Control becomes the new pleasure. And once that shift happens, you are no longer easily manipulated. You are no longer seduced by status signals. You are no longer a target. You become financially dangerous. But even if you escape scarcity and consumption, there is still a structural trap waiting. A trap built into how most people earn money. It is invisible. It is socially accepted. And it keeps people exhausted. It is called the linear income trap. Now we arrive at the third chain. This one looks respectable. It looks responsible. It even looks noble. Hard work. But here is the uncomfortable truth. If your income is directly tied to your hours, your financial growth is mathematically capped. Most people are taught a simple formula. More hours equals more money. So they work overtime. They take second jobs. They drive rideshare on weekends. They sell more time. But time is finite. You have 24 hours per day. You must sleep. You must eat. You must recover. Your income has a ceiling. Your expenses do not. This is where inflation becomes the silent predator. When prices rise 6 to 8% per year, but wages increase 2 to 3% per year, you are not standing still. You are losing ground. You are running on a treadmill that gradually speeds up. The harder you run, the more exhausted you become. But the distance does not change. This is the linear income trap. Selling time creates linear growth, but wealth requires leverage. Leverage does not mean debt. It means value multiplication. Here is the shift. Stop asking, how can I work more? Start asking, how can I increase the value of each hour? This is where skill stacking enters. Most people try to be the best at one thing. The best accountant, the best designer, the best technician. That is competitive and crowded. But when you combine 2 or 3 decent skills, you become rare. For example, a construction worker who understands basic sales becomes a contractor who wins clients. A nurse who learns digital marketing can build health education platforms. A teacher who learns video editing can create scalable courses. Individually, these skills are common. Combined, they are uncommon. The market does not reward effort. It rewards rarity. When you stack skills, your income detaches from hours. You stop being replaceable. You become an asset. And assets are paid differently than labor. This is the beginning of exponential potential. But there is a psychological resistance here. Skill stacking requires delayed gratification. Learning after work. Studying instead of streaming. Practicing instead of relaxing. It requires you to invest in future capacity instead of present comfort, which leads to the next invisible chain. Even if you master your finances, even if you avoid dopamine traps, even if you build rare skills, there is one force that can quietly pull you back down. It is not economic, it is social. It is the gravity of your environment, and it may be the strongest force of all. You can beat scarcity, you can beat consumption, you can increase your value, but if your environment pulls you backward, you will never reach orbit. This is the fourth chain, social gravity. There is a simple idea that sounds cliché, but it is brutally accurate. You become the average of the people you spend the most time with, not because they control you, but because human beings are mimic machines. We absorb language, we absorb standards, we absorb limits. If everyone around you believes, the system is rigged, nothing ever changes, people like us don't get ahead, eventually you believe it too, even if you don't say it out loud. This is not about judging anyone, it is about physics again. When one crab tries to climb out of a bucket, the others instinctively pull it down, not because they are evil, but because your escape threatens their narrative. If you improve, they must question why they haven't. So when you start saving money, people say, relax, life is short. When you stop spending recklessly, they say, you've changed. When you study after work, they say, you think you're better than us? This is social gravity. It feels like loyalty. It feels like belonging, but it can become a prison. You must understand something difficult. Poverty is often cultural. It is a shared story of powerlessness. That story feels comforting. It removes responsibility, but it also removes possibility. So how do you escape without becoming isolated or arrogant? You curate your mental environment. If your physical environment cannot change immediately, your informational environment must. In the past, your zip code determined your ceiling. Today, your attention determines it. You can choose what enters your mind: books, podcasts, long-form interviews, biographies. When you study disciplined thinkers, you borrow their operating systems. You train your mirror neurons deliberately. You become the average of the authors you consume. And something subtle happens. Your standards rise. You stop tolerating mediocrity, not in others but in yourself. You begin measuring your life by growth instead of comfort. This does not mean abandoning friends. It means protecting your direction. You do not argue. You do not preach. You quietly build. And eventually the results speak. Now we arrive at the final chain, the one that determines whether you remain trapped or become unstoppable. This chain is mathematical. It is invisible. It works whether you understand it or not. It is the difference between paying interest and earning it. It is called the compound divide.